have to murder to get this location?
This is my friend's cabin. It's pretty cool, but I'm a little worried because we're all alone up here.
Yeah, it's definitely creepy enough. But I'm starting to think it's a bad idea for us to be here.
Come on, Pete. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Canetis, Translationum, Progressio, Conda, Eripastrada.
It's Dissecting Fiction with Vinny Murphy and Peter Patrizzo. Today on Dissecting Fiction,
Evil Dead.
Free, gonorrhea!
Knock it off. I gotta do the monologue.
In 1978, Sam Raimi, Rob Tapert, and Bruce Campbell would create a short film called Within the Woods. They did this in hopes of funding a feature-length film. It was successful, and that feature-length film would be called The Book of the Dead, and then later, The Evil Dead, starring Campbell as the hero Ash Williams. Now, the process was really difficult and strenuous, and it was even more difficult to find distribution for the film. That is, until the King stepped in. Having seen the film at cons, Stephen King would write a glowing review for Twilight Zone magazine. The film has a weirdly convincing documentary look that no one has seen since George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. And The Evil Dead would have a theatrical and home video release in 1983. The film would soon become a phenomenon. Though there was no planned sequel, and Raimi had intended Ash to die at the end of the first film, Evil Dead 2 was conceived as a way for Raimi to escape the studio system and for Raimi and Campbell to get back into comedic films. The film was having trouble getting picked up as well, but rumor is someone made a phone call. Yup, that guy. Raimi first developed a concept called Medieval Dead, but after realizing he didn't have the budget to pull it off, he shifted focus back to the cabin. Evil Dead 2 would be released in 1987, and after some difficulty with Universal Studios, they would release Army of Darkness in 1992, which would bring to fruition the whole Medieval Dead storyline and make Ash a bona fide cult superstar. Bruce Campbell, denofgeek.com, September 2016. You can't expect anything. In the Evil Dead movies, you can only expect the unexpected. These were never designed to be a franchise. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, merchandising kept Evil Dead afloat, but Evil Dead would return to the big screen in 2013 with the Evil Dead remake, which dropped a lot of the comedic elements of the earlier films. In 2015, Ash vs. Evil Dead would premiere on Starz and would bring back the original hero.
Hey dude, I just can't shake this feeling like there's something here watching us.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Let's just get the segment over with and try to get out of here.
Good idea. So today we're talking about The Evil Dead, my favorite horror franchise of all time, so I am super excited for this one.
Yeah, and you suggested this quite a while ago. We thought it would be appropriate to do as not only our 1-year anniversary,
1 year, y'all.
but our Halloween special.
Indeed. Yes. So let's jump right into it with the first one. First, I want to start off by saying how it was an insane production. They raised the funding by just asking local businesses in town, like dentists. I think didn't they get some money from some lawyers? I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I know they had drawn from all different people around Detroit, right?
Yeah, like the Michigan, Detroit area. Well, of course, Detroit's in Michigan, but I think they went other areas around there too, other than Detroit.
Well, a lot of where they got the funding was from, they did a short film called Within the Woods.
Yeah.
Talked about that in the intro a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's right. They did a lot of short films. It wasn't just that one.
Right, but that was the one to show that Raimi could do horror, because Raimi wasn't even sure he could.
Right, yeah.
So they end up with this film that no one wants.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They end up eventually getting it distributed.
Yeah, by, as you said, by the king himself. Helped them a lot with that.
King himself helped them a lot with that. And then it becomes kind of a thing.
Yeah,
People like it. Caused a big controversy in England. The whole video nasties controversy. I don't know if you know that.
Actually, it's did you know Sam Raimi was actually put on trial in the UK for making Evil Dead?
Yeah, and there's a lot of other horror writers and producers had to testify. It's a very interesting thing. In the US, we were kind of blind to it.
Yeah, no.
Because in the US, it was just,
Yeah.
People were like, oh, it's weird horror movies on VHS, great, whatever. In England, it was like a big deal, and a lot of people were very upset. Apparently,
there was a whole era of that with the video nasties. It was everything. Yeah, they really cracked down on that stuff. In fact, you couldn't even get a copy of Evil Dead in the UK for the longest time with the tree rape scene in it. They cut it out in pretty much all copies that were available in the UK. So
listen, that's always been, I mean, it's fairly typical that in the UK they'll cut out sort of some violence, like forms of violence as opposed to sex, where in the US we tend to cut sex and leave the violence.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting.
I guess love our violence.
That's an interesting comment on the cultures, I guess. So that does, Evil Dead gets Raimi a little bit of following.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Heads to the studios, does Crime Wave.
Yeah, works with the Coen brothers a bit. Crime Wave.
But that becomes a complete disaster.
And then there was interest that just started coming about for a sequel. I forgot who it was that originally said hey, you should try doing the sequel to Evil Dead.
Yeah, I'm not sure who said it. I know that Raimi was mostly interested just to kind of get away from the studio system and get back into just having more control over everything. They had so much control over the Evil Dead, so much, down to the placement of a candle. So
they were like, you know what? Let's just remake it, essentially.
Yeah, and they were all fairly young.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting, that to me is one of the most interesting things about Evil Dead 2, which is, myself, I have to say, is my favorite.
Me too.
Let's
see. Yeah, no, Evil Dead 2 is my absolute favorite of the franchise.
I feel like you could see, they certainly were retelling the story, but I think in a lot of ways they were reframing the story, where it went from, the sort of very deliberate, we have to be a horror movie, to, all right, this is closer to what I want to do.
Well, you see, the thing for me was that I actually saw Evil Dead 2 before I saw the original, when I was younger. So, to me, Evil Dead 2 was always, that's the movie that makes Ash. That's who makes the character we all know and love.
Definitely.
And,
I think, Ash before that is just a character in a horror movie.
Yeah. Sam Raimi said it this way. He basically said, a lot of horror movies have a bunch of people getting picked off one by one, whereas in Evil Dead you have one guy getting picked on by a bunch of people at once.
But I think it's an interesting transition, really, where you see the very deliberate shift, where, I actually like the Evil Dead a lot. I think it's a cool movie to start.
Oh, yeah.
Evil Dead 2 is my favorite, but Evil Dead 2 is definitely, he's pulling it away from the horror to go to the things they're more comfortable and more interested in, which, Evil Dead 2 it's an interesting piece of where you can kind of see where, Sam Raimi was like, all right, horror's not really my thing.
Yeah, but you know what? Everyone on that movie was just having a blast. You look at the behind-the-scenes stuff with Greg Nicotero and Robert Berger and Robert Kurtzman. They were just having a blast behind the scenes the whole time. And I think it really came through in the actual movie. You could tell it's just a bunch of prop guys having fun,
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's even beyond that. I think it's a better told story than the first one.
Absolutely.
The first one it's good and it's unique, but it's rough. Evil Dead 2 is kind of like a playground.
Yeah.
And so you have, by the end of Evil Dead 2, you really have, Ash established as, a character.
And I really love Evil Dead 2 as well because it really portrayed Ash as this character who was not only being broken down physically, but mentally as well.
Right.
Like, they portrayed that beautifully. See, one of my favorite aspects of Evil Dead is not just the people getting possessed, but the environments getting possessed around them as well, and having the evil, the Deadites, warping, manipulating reality, making you question your own sanity. Like, that's the stuff I really love in the franchise.
Yeah, and then so having Evil Dead 2 and having established this sort of world now, much more than the Evil Dead, you go into Army of Darkness, which was kind of where it was supposed to go originally. And they just didn't have the money.
Yeah, and if you want to talk tone shift.
But you know what's funny? I don't think it's too harsh of a tone shift from 2.
Sam Raimi said it himself. Evil Dead's a horror movie. Evil Dead 2's a comedy. Army of Darkness is an action adventure.
Right, but it keeps all the comedy, and changing the scenery changes how the Deadites function anyway.
Right.
Like, you put the Deadites in the modern world, it's going to have to be somewhere isolated. It's going to, because you'd just be mowing them down with machine guns if it wasn't.
Right, absolutely.
You put them in the medieval setting, you can do a lot more with them. They're much more of a threat.
You play more with that, like the necromancy aspect of, like, medieval fantasy, which is really cool.
Right. And, like, the whole Army of the Dead thing plays a lot better. Like, it makes sense that's what they would be trying to do, really. And now you've put this character into it and kind of spit him back out the other side eventually, but with no real resolution. But then, so you have Army of Darkness.
Right.
Where it's sort of the last of, like, the real, like, you could even say it's pretty close to the last of, like, that VHS generation as far as, like, the movies that are getting pumped out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they're counting on those rentals of VHS. DVD will come up, but...
Right.
And that's really, you can count the video games, which we're going to a little bit. Yeah, but...
I just want to say one more thing about Army of Darkness 2 is, Army of Darkness is funny, it's also the only movie in a franchise that has the most different versions of it. There's like 4 different cuts of Army of Darkness.
One with, like, like the director's cut having the very different ending, which would have led to a totally different strain.
Right. The original ending to Army of Darkness was Ash sleeps too long, wakes up in a post-apocalyptic future.
Because he didn't do what he was supposed to do.
Of course. And the sequel that Sam Raimi originally wanted to do for that sounded awesome. It was going to be Ash finding, like, these old robots in this dystopian apocalyptic future, and then using the robots to kill all the Deadites.
Which then would have been a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So he would have jumped genres again. But Universal says no. Yeah. We end up with Ash going back to work at S-Mart.
Yeah.
And for a long time, we don't really get anything substantial.
Right.
So, 2015.
Yep.
Starz starts Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah. It's a funny story about that because I think it was between the year, I want to say 2007 to about maybe 2010. They were actually, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell were actually, like, making the internet blow up with all these little, like, comments of, like, hey, maybe we're doing Army of Darkness 2. Maybe it's happening. Right. Sam Raimi's working on the script. He's talking to the studio. Blah, getting everyone all excited. And it never happened. Right. So I was like, of course. So when they announced the show, I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. I thought the first season was really solid. I really enjoyed season 2. I agree with a lot of people, though, saying that the ending wasn't as strong. But I actually watched the ending again recently, and I actually liked it more the second time around.
See, and this is where, like, I'll have my moment of shame here. I don't like... Well, I shouldn't... Okay, don't is a hard thing to say. I did not like season 1 of Ash vs. Evil Dead. I found... Okay, Ash, up until this point... And let's say, like, we've already kind of in this discussion eliminated the Evil Dead as really kind of being Ash. It is, but the character's not really developed.
Right.
Ash was on screen for what? Maybe just shy of 5 hours, right? In the whole of, like, the character's existence.
The whole first season? Yeah.
Not the first season. I'm talking about the movies.
You mean the movies. Oh, okay, yeah.
I think that style of comedy works when you're doing an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Okay, right. I was so just bored with the comedy by like episode 3. Like it was just it felt like it wasn't enough story. And I got into this is actually funny. We got into this in the first episode too. Yeah. I thought it wasn't enough story to carry the amount of episodes. Right. And after a while, like, I just kind of started to hate Ash. I was just kind of like, this is irritating. Like, I don't like this guy. He's kind of annoying, and not much is happening because this is being spread out. And so I never made it to season 2. I kind of intended to try to check it out before we did this, but like, even so, it's a lot of time. Like, that's an investment. Like, it's not...
Yeah, no, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I do. But it's hard for me to hate anything with Bruce Campbell in it, especially if it's him as Ash. But
it's not. It's not a hate. It's just looking at it and trying. I think you still have to bring objectivity to it, regardless of the topic. No, absolutely. Like, and I love the movies. Like, you know that.
I get where you're coming from. Like, you're not the only Evil Dead fan who said he didn't really care much for the show.
And outside of that, there's a couple of things. First of all, 2013, there was a remake.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you explain that somber reaction to the film?
All right. Here we go. First off, I just want to start by saying I don't hate the remake.
That sounded like you hated the remake. I'm not gonna lie. I usually don't. I don't react to things that way unless I hate them. I'm not like cake. Cake. Don't get me started on cake.
And I think the director is very talented, Fede Alvarez. I really loved the other movie he did that came out last year, Don't Breathe. So it's nothing against him. Okay. First, can I start off by telling a little story about my experience of seeing the remake?
Go ahead. I'm interested. I think they're interested.
All right. So at the time when the movie came out, I was taking this girl I was seeing, who I liked, and so we went to go see it. She'd never seen the originals, so we go watch it, and like the movie ends, we leave. I'm kind of like, she's like, what do you think? I'm like, yeah, I liked it. It was alright. She's like, I think it was one of the most original horror movies I've seen in years. And I almost had a brain aneurysm. I was like, but it's a remake. How can it be original? Like, granted, you could argue he tried to have an original take, but he really didn't.
I totally disagree with that. I think he had a really original take. I thought his angle worked.
It was, hey, let's just have, okay. As I said before, one of my favorite aspects of Evil Dead is not just the people getting possessed, but the environments getting possessed as well. Okay. And that was completely absent in the remake, for the most part. I mean, there was some stuff, but it felt like he just put it there because he felt like he had to. Like the tree rape scene in the remake felt like he just put it there because, it's in the original, so I should put it in there.
I'll be honest, I just rewatched this movie. I totally disagree. Like 100%. Right.
That's all right.
I think he took what is a very, very creepy basis. Like, to start, The Evil Dead is what it is. It's a cheap 80s horror movie. Yeah. That functions, and it's awesome, and it's a lot of fun, and I like it a lot. This one took it and made it serious, and I think through just the location and sort of the dread he poured into every shot, that whole feeling of all of it coming in on them, you didn't need gimmicks. Maybe that was a little out of place, but I also just saw it with someone who doesn't watch a lot of horror movies. Okay. And they freaked when they saw that scene. And didn't talk about it being out of place. The tree rape in
the remake.
In the remake.
Yeah.
I think it's effective. You have to... We are going to not be able to be super objective. It's just the truth. Right. Because we've seen so many movies that are like this. Yeah. Regardless, I really like that movie. And I liked it then, I like it now. But seeing someone who hadn't been exposed really to any of that, seeing those sequences, it completely bugged them out.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I really liked it. I thought that movie was like super balanced, like super. I really like it.
Just like the show, it's just one thing we won't be able to agree on, my friend.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. Like, it's fine, you know. So yeah.
I'm not trying to change your opinion. I'm just trying to tell you you're wrong. No,
I'm trying to tell you you're wrong.
That's not true. All opinions are beautiful. So there's also a couple of movies that are kind of maybe Evil Dead movies. You got Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, Drag Me to Hell. You know what? Me and my roommate who watched it at the time it came out, we came up with the same theory that it takes place in the Evil Dead universe.
Right, it would make sense.
Yeah.
As far as, and then, like, you know, I don't even know if they name them demons, whatever, kind of just act like Deadites and they possess objects and people and different things.
Yeah, I really enjoy Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't watched it in a while. I'm meaning to.
I mean, it's not the best movie, but for what it is, I enjoy it. You know, it's fun to see Sam Raimi play around with the horror tropes again. You know. And
then I guess the other one that's the big deal is Cabin in the Woods. Which is interesting itself because it's kind of an explanation for all horror movies, but it's very, very clearly looking at the Evil Dead.
Dissect this.
Pete here with another Dissect This. Though it is common for a franchise to receive the video game treatment as it grows in popularity, The Evil Dead delved into the medium surprisingly early in 1984's The Evil Dead for the Commodore 64. Though crude by today's standards, the game was well reviewed upon release, with Commodore Horizons calling it gothic. Novel. Get it? Commodore Horizons. Always bringing the comedy. It would be 16 years before Ash returned to home video games with Evil Dead Hail to the King for the PlayStation, Dreamcast, and PC. Here, the story picks up from Army of Darkness and Ash encounters characters both new and old. In 2003, THQ released Evil Dead, A Fistful of Boomstick for PS2 and Xbox to better reviews. It came out at $19.99, so it at least felt a little better. Hey, Evil Dead was always better low budget. Why not keep it that way? Fistful of Boomstick also acknowledges the plot of Hail to the King while returning to the time travel elements of Army of Darkness. With solid sales on the title, THQ would create one more console Evil Dead game with Regeneration in 2005. The game takes place in an alternate timeline where Ash was committed to an insane asylum and lives his life through some repetitive puzzles and mass destruction. Regeneration received similar reviews to its predecessor, but was once again praised for the performance of Campbell and for its bargain price point. Though Regeneration would be Ash's last outing to date on console, mobile received Army of Darkness Defense and Evil Dead the Game in 2011.
It was the woods themselves! They're alive!
Oh man, Vinny, are you okay?
Yeah, I'll be alright. Let's just get to the picks.
The picks.
So, this is a new segment on the show. We're going to do this probably every episode if it does well, right?
Yeah, I'd say
we're going to do
so.
some picks. We're hashtagging it because we're hip.
Yeah.
That's going to be... So, we'll start with hashtag what to read. So, I'm going to go with the Creepshow reissue.
Okay. Cool.
Just came out. Not the movie.
No.
They did a comic of it. It's Stephen King, George Romero, Bernie Wrightson, a couple guys we lost recently.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
But it's a cool adaptation. It's not really much more than an adaptation. It's just nice to see the stories in the form that they're kind of theoretically in. They're supposed to be the Tales from the Crypt, like EC stuff.
Yeah, I've seen it at the bookstore at the mall by me. I've been meaning to pick it up. The reason why I didn't get it there is because all the copies they had were like messed up, like some of the covers were bent and stuff.
It is one of the drawbacks of it is they didn't put it out in hardcover. They put it back out in paperback. So yeah, find a good copy. But it is widely available. You can order it through comic book stores, through bookstores. Not difficult at all. And like the art is gorgeous. It's totally worth the time.
And my pick is Batman The Long Halloween. Tim Sale's artwork is just phenomenal. Draws you in every page. Jeff Loeb just writes one of the best Batman stories ever written. What I love about it is it takes place within a year. It's from one Halloween to the next. Right. And it's just this really, really intriguing murder mystery and a great read for this time of year.
All right. And I think that's as far as reading what we've got. Now we'll do the thing again. Hashtag what to watch. I'm going with Trick or Treat. I think it's kind of the ultimate Halloween movie.
Of course.
We talked about it last year. I don't care. I'm talking about it again. I love it that much.
I can't even get mad because it's a phenomenal movie. Like, you got to watch that this time of year. It's a must watch.
It's a must watch. Like greatest Halloween movie of all time is a hard debate, but it's definitely up there.
It's hard to top.
It is hard to top.
Yeah.
Other pick I want to throw out there, a little more obscure, 976 Evil just came out on Blu-ray. They put it out with old Columbia Home Video logos on it. It's really cool looking. The transfer on the theatrical version's awesome. They also threw in the longer VHS version.
Oh, really?
Which is the VHS version. It looks like the VHS version. But they left everything really intact. Like, they didn't change any logos out, nothing like that.
Interesting.
It's really cool for a release of a movie that not a lot of people care about outside of me and Robert Englund.
And
and Pete.
And me.
It was really nice to see that release. I was really impressed.
Awesome, yeah. For me, my first movie pick is Night of the Demons, the original 1988 version. Do not watch the remake. Watch the original. Sorry, get a little worked up, but it is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It is also a Halloween horror film. It takes place on Halloween. It's about a bunch of teenagers going into a haunted house, and it becomes like this crazy demonic possession movie. But it has like this great, like, just cheesy 80s vibe to it. I mean, it's 80s, so of course. And it also has just a great 80s metal soundtrack.
That's cool.
Yeah. And my second pick would have to be something a bit more kid-friendly, The Halloween Tree.
It's rare on this show.
Yeah. No, this was actually one of my favorite TV specials I grew up watching as a kid. It's an animated TV special. It's based off the Ray Bradbury book of the same name, of course. And, it's just about a bunch of kids going around on Halloween night trying to... Oh! Vinny! What's going on? Oh, wait. Are you okay? Vinny! Vinny! What's going on? Are you alright? What do I do? Screw this! Good! Bad! What is it? That's what I want to say!
Sure, check out all of our social media. If you just plug in Dissecting Fiction to Google, you're going to find us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. That's right?
Wait, what's going on here? Why aren't you a Deadite? Why am I not getting my badass demon killer moment?
Look, we had this discussion on the Hellraiser episode. We can't afford that.
Dissecting Fiction is sponsored in part by
The X-Y Group.